What's up, guys? Okay, in this video, we're going to be talking about message market fit. What is message market fit? It is the process of identifying the cold outreach message that best resonates with your audience and generates positive ROI consistently. It consistently generates a stream of leads. And it's a real science. So I'm going to break down the theory and the steps that we carry out to achieve message market fit hyper efficiently for our clients, and how we actually do that in practice for our own agency. And of course, once you find message market fit, once you identify that message that's resonating consistently, then of course, outbound becomes pretty easy because you can just scale up volume based on that strategy. Now, let's get into the theory. There's 5 key steps that you need to carry out to achieve message market fit. Number 1 is strategy formulation. So this is where you want to formulate over 10 different outreach strategies, right? 10 unique outreach templates, essentially, where each strategy, each template, whatever you want to call it, embodies a distinctive quality to it. It might be a specific trigger. It might be a specific tone. It might be a specific narrative. You just want to formulate at least 10. And then once and ideally you want variety that spans across the 10 or so strategies. So you can get as much insight and as much coverage on what kind of things are resonating with your audience. Once you've done that, move on to step 2. This is campaign deployment. So you want to allocate at least 2,000 leads to each strategy. So when you're doing this, you're going to need to scrape quite a lot of leads, 20,000 leads. And you want to allocate 2,000 leads to each strategy. And that volume is important because any less and the conclusions that you draw just become much less robust. You need sufficient volume to draw robust conclusions to determine whether to iterate a strategy or just scrap it altogether. And then deploy the campaign. Then analyze the results, determine which ones are performing well and equally which ones aren't. The industry benchmark is 1 positive reply from every 350 contacts targeted, right? So essentially 1 lead generated from every 350 contacts targeted. As an agency, we're operating around the 1 lead from every 200 contacts targeted. Our rule of thumb here is that if you're not getting 1 lead from 750 contacts targeted, if you're not getting lower than that, then scrap the strategy altogether. If you are getting lower than that, then iterate it, because it's likely that you'll be able to bring it down to 1 in 200, 1 in 300 territory if you're in that upper range of 1 in 750. Once you've iterated, optimized the messaging, fleshed out the sequence, you'll be able to bring that down to a really high converting ratio. So yeah, and then once you identify which strategies are winning, then you get more granular with the A/B testing. So first off, you map out 10 strategies that all have a distinctive component. You identify the ones that are converting at under 1 in 750, and then you start to A/B test on the granular components of those messages, like the subject line, if we're doing cold email as opposed to cold LinkedIn, the PS line, the opening statement, the length, and that's when you just start to squeeze out even more value from these messages. Step 4 is where we actually build the sequence. So what you want to do is identify the strategies that are winning well, that are performing, iterate them, and then collate them into one sequence. So your highest performing email amongst the 10, or your highest performing outreach message amongst the 10, should be step 1 in the sequence. Your second highest performing should be step 2. Your third highest performing should be step 3. And of course, you may need to adapt the copy to ensure that the tone and the narrative throughout the sequence is cohesive and consistent. Build out the sequence, and then finally, step 5 is just a case of scaling up the volume on that optimized sequence, whilst also allocating 20% to continually experimenting with new messaging. So you don't want to get complacent and put all your eggs in one basket. You never want to do that. That's bad practice. Purely on the basis that you should be constantly experimenting with new ideas. For you know, there's strategies out there that you're yet to test, you're yet to uncover, that are going to perform even higher. Right? You want to be constantly committed to getting better results. You never want to go stagnant, and equally to avoid copy fatigue. So copy fatigue is when you push a message for such a long time frame to such high volume that either the spam filter starts to detect it and mark it as spam, or the people that you're targeting have already received that message before from you and they've become desensitized to it. So you need to refreshen it, right? So that needs to happen when you recycle your TAM after 4 or 5 months. Well, depends on your TAM. Okay, so now let's see how this works in practice. Now, I just put together 5 strategies for the sake of demonstration, but to reiterate, you should try and put together north of 10. And these are based on our own agency services. So these strategies are designed to generate sales opportunities to win clients for our agency. So as you can see, we've got actually 6 strategies here because I decided to split test on on S2 and S2B. The S just stands for strategy, and the number is just to enumerate each strategy. So what I recommend doing is creating a Google Doc and just devising all your strategies on a Google Doc. Just put together templates that are fleshed out. I recommend doing that because it's much easier to gauge the quality of an email when you flesh it out with either a fabricated ICP recipient or a real business. In this case, I've used a real business. Birdie is a company I actually used to work for, so it's easy for me to understand and see what it looks like. So formulate all your strategies, put them here, give them a title, give them a kind of an ID name, and once you've done that and you're happy with it, then we can move into Clay. I'm not going to unpack the copy here and the principles that underpin the copy. I'll save that for another video. But as you can see, there's some good variety spanning the 5-6 campaigns. For example, ICP match. So this is where we are targeting a company that is very similar to customers, to existing customers that we work with. So it's kind of like a lookalike campaign. Profile insights. So this is where we are identifying specific information based on their employment experience. Recipient case study identified. So this is where we identify case studies on their website and another fallback strategies. So it's important to note that amongst your 10 to 15 strategies, that they'll all fall into one or two buckets. Either they're trigger-based strategies or they're universal strategies. Universal strategies, or they're also called fallback strategies, right? A strategy is that every single lead in your lead list is going to qualify for. The trigger-based, however, only in theory, they could all qualify for trigger-based strategies, but it's very unlikely, right? So trigger-based are when we are identifying a specific data point on the recipient that qualifies for them, that qualifies them for that strategy. For example, it might be a company that is hiring for a sales rep, or it might be a company that's recently been funded. So the way you want to build your Clay table is to gather all your research on your leads, determine which leads qualify for your trigger-based strategies, prioritize them, and then any leads that don't qualify for those triggers, push them to the fallback strategies, right? To ensure that every lead is covered. For example, this is a trigger-based strategy. We're not able to identify case studies on the recipient's website for every single lead, right? This is also trigger-based. We are identifying information on their employment history, their trajectory at the company that they work for. Again, we're not going to get that data for every lead that we target. This is also trigger-based to lookalike. We're identifying companies that are similar to existing customers, and this is a fallback strategy. So how we build that out in Clay, We have our lead lists. We have our qualified lead list. So we have separate tables for qualification and then for building out the campaigns. For qualification, we run quite a rigorous 4 or 5 step process where we firstly use Clagent to actually view their LinkedIn profile and just ensure they're still occupying the role associated with them at the company associated to them as well. There is a risk that between the time that you scrape the data and the time you actually enrich the leads, that user is, or that lead is no longer at that company. That's the first step. Second step is qualifying based on job title, right? Using AI to review the job title and ensuring it's ICP persona. It's an ICP role. 3 is ensuring that the company is ICP. And we also have a block list enrichment. And then, of course, finding valid emails. I'm not going to go into this process in too much detail. But once we've qualified the leads, we then push them to this table where we build out the campaigns. Now, this is where we allocate the strategies, right? So like I said, one of the campaigns was trigger-based. Several of the campaigns were trigger-based. One of them was case study. So we're using Clagent to visit the recipient's website and see if we can identify any case studies, right? Any testimonials on their website. If we can, then we run a checkbox formula to check this box and therefore qualify them for S4 case study, right? As you can see, it's about 10%. So when we go to S4, you can see we configure the run conditionings to only run if S4 is checked. Right? Only run if S4 is true. And we just carry out that process for the rest of the strategy. So that's S4 ticked. S2 and S2B, again, what we're doing is we're using AI to analyze the recipient's company and determine if it aligns with any of the companies in our existing client base. I'm not going to open up this enrichment or these values because I don't want to violate the confidentiality I have with my clients. But as you can see, again, it's about 10% that qualify for these two. And then what we do if we find a case study is we run checkboxes again to check the box if we have a case study. And because we're A/B testing on this specific strategy, we've got an A and a B, what we do is we run a formula to randomly output a number, 1 or 2, to determine which one it qualifies for. Finally, S3 is to view their LinkedIn profile, which was the profile insights one, and determine if there's any insights regarding their trajectory in their sales role as sales director that we can leverage for that strategy, and that qualifies them for S3, profile insights. And then the fallback strategies, we again just A/B test on. So we have 2 fallback strategies. And the way we do that is just like we did before. We run a formula to randomly output a number 1 to 2 if none of the previous checkbox are checked, and then that determines which one they're allocated to. And we have a pretty even split across all leads, which is great. So we've got 6 strategies here. We've got 9,000 leads that I've scraped, but in theory, you should have more. You should have double that. Like I said, you want to allocate 2,000 leads to each strategy. We generate the email and we push to Smartlead. So that is our process. We've just deployed these campaigns, so I don't have the results yet. But what we will do is let the campaigns run out. We will determine which ones are proving to be effective. We'll then get granular on the testing and test different components like the subject lines, the PS lines, all those different components that I outlined previously. And once we've optimized them and we've squeezed out as many positive replies as they're able to generate, we'll then collate them into one cohesive sequence, ensuring that a narrative flows throughout that sequence. Okay, so historically it would take us around a month, sometimes 2 months, to find message market fit for our clients. However, as a result of really doubling down on committing to the science of finding message market fit and this process and split testing very extensively, very rigorously, we are now finding message market fit in under 2 weeks and sometimes 1 week. We've had 2 clients in the past month that have more than doubled their package with us in just the first 2 weeks because we have identified that message really efficiently, and therefore it just makes sense to maximize that package, right? Once you've validated that strategy, that message, there is no reason why you shouldn't scale it up to the max, because it's a printer. It just provides a consistent stream of leads at scale. Now, if you want to see what this looks like in practice for your business, we will put together 10 plus templates for your business, right? Based on our highest performing, highest converting strategies, we will put together 10 that are uniquely tailored to your ICP based on your product. And for good measure, if you like what you see, we will happily jump on a consultation call with you and walk you through the entire process end to end, from scraping leads to actually executing these campaigns and optimizing them. And whether you therefore want to develop the skill and go down the steep learning curve and keep things in-house, or outsource to an agency, an expert like us, then that's up to you. But what I'll do is I'll leave my brother and co-founder's meeting link in the captions. And if you want to discuss this further, jump on a call with us.